Good evening. It's wonderful to see you all. Also, those in the cloud zendo, wherever you are on this planet, in this beautiful world. Glad to be with you tonight. I'm going to introduce myself because Kodo is in Mexico with Roshi Joan. And so I think many people, both online and here, know me. But for those of you who don't, my name is Zenshin Florence Kaplow. I am a priest in the Everyday Zen lineage, which is part of San Francisco Zen Center, descended from the teacher Suzuki Roshi, one of the great Japanese teachers who brought Zen to America. And I began as a Vipassana student and still practice in that tradition at times. And it's 30 years ago today that I did, or maybe not today, but this month, that I started my first practice period at Green Gulch Farm. And so it's wonderful to have walked this path for a while and still be learning. As those of you online can see, I am speaking from the Zendo at Upaya. I have had the great fortune to be here for several weeks as a visiting teacher. Truly great fortune. And I also want to acknowledge that this is an auspicious night because for the first time in nearly 3 years, there are members of the local Sangha here with us. This is a wonderful thing. Well, and it's even more amazing that they're here because there is snow everywhere. There is snow upon snow upon snow in Santa Fe. It's been an extraordinary time of just, it'll stop for a little while, it'll come back, it'll keep snowing, it'll probably be snowing tonight. It's going to get very cold tonight. And this afternoon, as I was walking, and I have a little walk from where I'm staying to the Zendo, it was a whiteout. And I walked in and somebody laughed because I was absolutely covered in snow. It was like a snow priest. And then we went and sat for 40 minutes and we came out and there was brilliant sun, blue sky. That's what it's been like. It's really, really been magical. And I wanted to share a little dogen because what's a Soto Zen Dharma talk without a little dogen? And a couple of poems. And one I put up, we have a little board in the kitchen where things appear, normally the menu for the meal, but also a little haiku, sometimes written by the residents or little wonderful inspiring quotes. And I put this on the board a few nights ago. It's called Bowing Formally. A snowy heron on the snowfield where winter grass is unseen, hides itself in itself. And then I was looking at another one today as one of his Chinese poems, and it's just called Snow. I'll just read the last 2 lines because they're so wonderful, especially because we're surrounded by snowy mountains right now. Many years wasted seeing the mountain covered with snow. This winter, I suddenly realize snow makes a mountain. So there have been many joys in this time of being here and practicing formally with this wonderful community. And many thanks to Roshi Joan for inviting me to come. But one of the greatest joys is an opportunity to go to this little interview room that's over there and speak face to face and very intimately about practice. And many of the residents have joined me in that little room. There are many people online that over the last few years I've also met in that way. And each time I am so struck and moved by the person's sincerity and courage in their practice and in their life. So, in honor of those courageous people, all these courageous people who are here and everywhere, and also for the courage of Roshi Joan, who I think has lived a life of courage, a life of really manifesting courageous living and action. I'm going to talk about courage today. And I'm going to start with kind of a dramatic story with a fair amount of expletives in it. Just a little warning, in case you need to close your ears. A few weeks ago, somehow online, I ran across this video that came out a couple of years ago, and it's 6 minutes long. That's actually quite significant. And it starts, it's a young man who's running in Utah in the fall, beautiful fall colors. He's wearing a GoPro. So you're seeing him running down this road in Utah with all these colors. And you see these little animals up ahead of him. Later, he said he thought they were bobcat kittens, and he was so happy to see them. But they weren't bobcat kittens. They were mountain lion kittens. Mm-hmm. And Mama was the next thing to appear on the camera. It's pretty incredible that he showed this, or chose to share this video with the world, because it's very unique. Not many people have seen anything like this. And it definitely shows his own vulnerability. So he sees this mountain lion, and the mountain lion is coming towards him. And he starts to back, which is just the right thing to do. He doesn't turn his back on the lion. He's backing up down the road. And the first thing he says is, "Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit." And he says that a lot over the course of the next 6 minutes. And then he tries roaring, and he goes, "Roar!" And he hisses. And he says, "Please go away." And he says, "I'm big and scary." Although he is not feeling big and scary at that moment. He says, "You're a good little kitty cat." He says, "What's up, dude?" And then he says, as this goes on, and the cat is moving towards him steadily as he backs up this road. Then he says, "Okay, this is when I fucking die. I don't feel like dying today. This is not fun. Go back to your babies. Go get your babies. I promise I won't come back. I just wanted to go for a run today." And every once in a while, this lion, who is calmly and inexorably walking towards him at the same rate that he's backing up, actually rushes him with her teeth and claws bared. And eventually, at about the 6 minute mark, he had tried a couple of times to reach down to get a stone to try to throw it at her, but each time that's when she went for him. But finally, he manages to do that, and she turns around and she runs down the road. So it's a pretty amazing video. And I was so intrigued by this encounter that I went and watched another video that he did a day or two later with a man who really is a mountain lion conservationist. And one of the things they talked about is that actually he really did do all the right things. And that almost certainly this lion was not going to eat him that day. That's not how they do it. They come from behind. You don't know that they're there until it's too late. She was simply backing him up the road and away from her children. But the other thing that really moved me about this interview afterwards is this man asked him, well, how do you feel about lions now? And he said, I want to make sure there's always lions in the world. And I want to help. I've had this unique encounter, and it makes me feel close to them. And he was also asked if he was going to run on that road again, because he lives in the area. And he said, yes, I will. This story reminds me a little bit, especially all the different things he tries over the course of this encounter. It reminds me of a famous Tibetan Buddhist story, which I'm sure someone in the room knows, about Milarepa and the demons, where Milarepa, who was a great yogi, is sitting in his cave, and these demons start bothering him. And he tries all these different ways to get them to go away. He reads sutras to them. That gets rid of some of them, probably long, boring sutras. They go away. He tries offering them tea. Some of them go away after being offered tea. It's a gesture of kindness. But at the end, there's one last demon that just won't go away. And so he places himself in the mouth of the demon, and the demon disappears. I've always loved that story. So I have lived a life, you're going to hear a little more about me over the course of this talk. I have lived a life where I've had actually a fair number of wildlife encounters myself, because I was a field biologist for many years, doing rare plant surveys all over the West. So I've certainly encountered my share of bears, especially in Alaska, and I'm scared of bears. I have seen a lion in the wild, although it was a perfect way to see a lion. It's driving over the mountains from Santa Cruz to the coast. And I came around the corner and there was a lion up on the hillside hunting maybe like mice, something small. This incredible red gold creature with rippling muscles. And I was so happy to see this lion, and I was so happy that I was in a car. All the places that I could have seen a lion. And one time I was working in northeastern Washington, close to an Indian reservation, and they had brought back a buffalo herd. And we were not in the area where the buffalo herd was supposed to be. They had a very large fenced area with 8-foot fences for the buffalo. But we were close by, and I was working with my field partner in this open meadow with these little clumps of trees. And I looked over to my left, probably about from here to the wall. And there was this enormous buffalo looking at me from a little stand of trees that was not nearly big enough to hide the buffalo. And I, without thinking, broke into a dead run. And I ran right past my field partner, who did not know why I was running. And she was running after me going, what's happening? And only when we got back to the car did I tell her. And I think to this day, I'm not sure she believes that I really saw a buffalo. So that's kind of my response to wild animals. Not always the most graceful. And all this brings me to a koan. And this is a koan. It's one of the 100 koans collected in the Hidden Lamp, which is a book that, along with Sue Moon, I worked on for a number of years. Each koan includes a story from a contemporary woman Buddhist teacher, including one in the room right now, Natalie Goldberg. And these koans, these stories come from all the way from the time of the Buddha to the 20th century. And just to say, there's been an ongoing study group for the hidden lamp through Upaya that started in the spring of 2020. We're actually coming up to our 4th year, and we'll be meeting on Saturday. We're going to be doing a hybrid, the first time, hybrid hidden lamp, where those who have been part of it online, and anyone can join, you can sign up today if you want, will be engaging with one of these stories, as will the residents. And we'll be doing that all together. So this is a story from 9th century China, the Chan master Zhao, and it's one of his many encounters with unnamed old women. I've sometimes wondered if they're all actually the same old woman, but I don't know. I'll just read you the story, and then I'll read you I'll say a little more. One day, when Master Zhao was outside the monastery, he saw an old woman hoeing a field. He asked her, "What would you do if you suddenly met a fierce tiger?" She replied, "Nothing in this world frightens me," and turned back to her hoeing. Zhao roared like a tiger. She roared back at him. Rah! And Zhao said, "There's still this." This is one of many of you online and in person, spent a bunch of time with classic Chinese koans last month. And sometimes they can seem really far away from our direct experience. So I'm going to retell this story. I'm going to try to bring it a little closer to us. And I can actually imagine this happening. Okay, here goes. Here's the story retold. One day, Roshi Joan Halifax was walking down Cerro Gordo Road outside the monastery. And she saw her old friend, Natalie Goldberg, picking apples in her garden. Roshi asked Natalie, "What would you do if you suddenly met a fierce mountain lion?" Natalie replied, "Nothing in this world frightens me," and turned back to her apples. Roshi Joan roared like a mountain lion. Natalie roared back at her. Roshi Joan said, "There's still this." I'm not saying that they would have necessarily had just that encounter, but I could imagine it. I could. So let's go back to this old woman in the story. "Nothing in this world frightens me." What an incredible thing to say. Could any of us say this? What has this woman been through to be able to say this? What has she understood? What has she realized? Every few mornings here, we chant the Makahanya Haramita Shingyo, the Heart Sutra, which is chanted in Zen monasteries all over the world. And there's a line in it that most of you know. I'll bet, "Without hindrance, the mind has no fear." There are many translations of this. I'll just share a few of them because it's kind of interesting to hear the different ones. Without hindrance, there is no fear. Without walls of the mind, and thus without fears. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. And this from Thich Nhat Hanh, having no obstacles, they overcome fear. This line from the Heart Sutra struck me from the very first time that I heard it. Because fear and courage have been a big koan in my own life and practice. I was actually, as a very young person, tremendously afraid about this world and about how we are with one another in this world. And I wanted so much to be a person who could respond, who wouldn't run away. I read, the literature of South Africa. I read the literature of Argentina and Chile, people who chose to be courageous in the face of extraordinary authoritarian systems. And I wanted to be one of those people, but I wasn't sure I could be. And that's really what brought me to practice in a lot of ways. And the world really needs this. It needs people who won't run away. I went to Standing Rock in, what was that? That was 2016, yeah. And the courage that I saw there was truly inspiring. So many young people, so many Native people who dropped everything, people who have so little already, and came there to support those who were trying to protect the land and the waters that were traditionally theirs. Just recently, there was a really tragic death in Atlanta, Georgia, where an environmental activist was killed by the police under very mysterious circumstances that have still not been clarified. His name, he went by Tortuguito. His name was Manuel Esteban Pérez Terán. He was a Venezuelan protester. And he was interviewed a few weeks before he died by a journalist. And one of the things he said, I thought this was so beautiful. I am scared, but you can't let the fear stop you from doing things, from living, from existing, from resisting. I bow to you, Tortuguito, and all those who are bravely standing for the land and our future. And I just want to say a little bit about the very end of this koan, where Zhao says, there's still this. For a long time, that didn't make sense to me. What's going on there? And I don't really know, but this is my sense, is that what he's saying is that no matter whether you are realized or not, there is always the encounter. There's always that moment of when they roar at each other, when they meet each other, when you meet the lion, when you meet the tiger in your own mind. That practice is always there, with fear or with courage, or with both. So the way that courage and fear dance with one another, because without fear, there's nothing to be courageous about. And without courage, fear stops us or sends us fleeing. In the original teachings of the Buddha, one of the three major types of giving is giving someone freedom from fear. So in Sanskrit, the word is abhaya, fearlessness. And there is a mudra of fearlessness. And this mudra symbolizes the dispelling of fear. And I want us all to do this mudra together. And the Mahapajapati statue that is directly in my line of sight in front of me, outside the zendo in the snow right now, is actually holding this mudra. So you take your right hand and you bring it up to your side with the palm facing out. And just notice how that feels, offering the gift of fearlessness. And this is such an ancient gesture because we hold weapons in our right hand. And if your hand is like this, there's no weapon in it. And so the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas offer this to us this protection of the open right hand without a weapon. It is said that the historical Buddha made this hand gesture immediately after gaining enlightenment. And take out the word gaining, but after enlightenment. Okay, I'm going to tell you another scary animal story. This is a story from the time of the Buddha, that at one time he was about to be attacked by a mad elephant that had been sent against him as a weapon. The elephant, enraged and in pain, charged at the Buddha and his followers. While others ran away, that would be me, the Buddha stood calmly, raising his hand in a gesture of fearlessness. He felt great love and compassion for the stricken elephant. In response, the elephant stopped in its charge, became calm, and then approached the Buddha and bowed its head. And the Metta Sutta, which is sometimes chanted as well, was actually given as a gift by the Buddha to the monks and nuns who were practicing in the forest, in the tropical forest, where there were many dangerous animals. And they came to him saying, we're overcome by fear. And he offered this practice of loving kindness as an antidote to fear. Many of the stories in the Hidden Lamp are about courage. In fact, I think really all of them are about courage in one way or another, because it takes great courage to practice, whatever our gender, but particularly to practice as a woman in cultures that often saw women as being both less capable and less worthy. Sometimes the courage is very obvious, like the story of Ryonen, who, when told that she could not practice in a training temple with monks because her beauty would distract them, took up a hot iron and scarred her face, and then returned to the teacher and said, "What about now?" and was immediately admitted. I don't think, or I'd like to think, that it was not because she was now less beautiful and therefore less of a distraction to the monks, but because the teacher saw her courageous heart of practice, her determination. Dogen has a little bit to say about courage too. This is from the Eihei Koroku, the short Dharma Hall discourses, and it's called Courage of Patch-Robed Monks. That's us. That's all of us practicing. Entering the water without avoiding deep sea dragons, more wild animals, is the courage of a fisherman. Traveling the earth without avoiding tigers is the courage of a hunter. Facing the drawn sword before you and seeing death is just like life is the courage of a general. What is the courage of patch-robed monks? And it said that he paused. So let's pause and ask yourself that. So Dogen said, spread out your bedding and sleep. Set out your bowls and eat rice. Exhale through your nostrils. Radiate light from your eyes. That was his answer. Maybe you have your own. If you have ever sat a retreat or even a single period of zazen, you know this is true. It takes so much courage to meet our suffering, to meet our life raw and unadorned. Sometimes it takes even more courage than meeting a lion or a crazed elephant. Maybe all these animals are just metaphors for what we meet in our own heads and hearts. It takes a lot of courage to be a human being, to bear witness to life with its 10,000 joys and sorrows. Maybe some of you have heard this quote from Rilke in his great work, Letters to a Young Poet. How should we be able to forget those ancient myths that are the beginnings of all peoples? The myths about dragons that at the last moment turn into princesses. Perhaps all the dragons of our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us once beautiful and brave. Perhaps everything terrible is in its deepest being something that wants help from us. So you must not be frightened if a sadness rises up before you larger than you have ever seen. If a restiveness like light and cloud shadows passes over your hands and over all you do, you must think that something is happening with you, that life has not forgotten you, that it holds you in its hand. It will not let you fall. Why do you want to shut out of your life any uneasiness, any miseries, or any depressions? For after all, you do not know what work these conditions are doing inside you. I want to share one last hidden lamp koan about fear and courage. This one from 18th century Japan. One of the great Zen teachers of Japan, of course, was Hakuin Ekaku, who revived the Rinzai school of Zen. And he had a lot of really wonderful encounters with women. And this is one of them. And this was about, this story is about a woman disciple who was a courtesan. There are different versions of this story in translation. And it's not clear whether Hakuin met her before or after she was serving in a brothel. But I'm going to share, so it's a slightly different version that's in the Hidden Lamp, but I've come to really appreciate it, translated by Norman Waddell, which suggests she did indeed study Zen with Hakuin while in a brothel. This is the story. Ohashi was a young woman of Hara. When her samurai father lost his position on the death of his lord, she sold herself to a brothel to feed her family, even though they begged her not to do so, and although she herself pined for them. She studied Zen with Hakuin, who advised her to contemplate life as the ultimate koan. Enlightenment is possible in any circumstance. That was her koan from Hakuin. Although terrified by thunder, one day Ohashi made herself sit on the veranda of the brothel during a violent storm. A bolt of lightning hit the ground in front of her, knocking her unconscious. When she came to, she felt as if the universe was hers. Hakuin recognized her awakening. Ohashi was eventually redeemed by a rich patron whom she wed. Later, with her husband's permission, she ordained as a nun with Hakuin and became renowned for her wisdom and compassion. On her death, instead of making the customary memorial tablet that sits on the altar, her husband and friends had Ohashi carved as kanon, bodhisattva of compassion, also directly in front of me here, and had the image placed within Hakuin's temple. For me, what is beautiful about this koan is the connection, the direct connection between courage and compassion. Sometimes we think of courage as the courage of the warrior, that person that is not only willing to die, but willing to kill. But here, Ohashi embodies the spirit of kanon, the bodhisattva of compassion. because she was willing to be present to her deepest fears, to enter a brothel to save her family, to sell herself to a brothel, and then her willingness to be with the lightning. She became the embodiment of compassion. She could give the gift of fearlessness to others. When we turn towards our lions, turn towards the dragons, turn towards our own terrors with, as Roshi says, strong back, soft belly, right? With peace in our hearts. There is the possibility of transmutation and of awakening. So much of the harm in the world comes from fear and from the aggression that is born from fear. So this practice that we do, this very practice, like Ohashi sitting with her fear, is not just for us, but actually a radical response to what is, let's face it, a pretty scary world. And it's not just what happens on the cushion. Love takes courage. Grief takes courage. Caregiving takes courage. Illness takes courage. Getting old takes courage. Dying takes courage. Letting go of someone who is dying takes courage. I am infinitely grateful to this practice, which has fostered courage and compassion in my own heart and a willingness to be with my wild animals. And for your courageous practice, dear ones everywhere, you here in this Zendo, and you in the Mahasangha Cloud Zendo, all of us in it together. Thank you.